There we go. Look at that pool. Actually looks really bright and blue and fancy. There's another like nice little area up the top there. If you have a look at this. Boom. It's nice. We've been having a lot of success here, by the way. Been killing it here. After the last video where I was talking about hedonism and cleared up the STD issue and had to go and explain it to a bunch of other people. I was given it, and then I accidentally gave it to a few other people. This is what happens out there, guys. But today, there is a bit of a perception out there of guys that don't get any success with women. They want to get out there and tell you that you're chasing validation from women. They also want to say that, you're chasing too many women and you're dating too many women, and because you're not able to lock down a good relationship, maybe you're the problem, because you're doing that. And the other issue that guys think about, because they don't know what they're talking about, is that approaching lots of girls, trying to get through girls, through cold approach and dating a lot of different girls, it's like your happiness is dependent on external validation. That's kind of the argument. It's like you don't have any internal, it's like if you don't get laid or you don't get sex, then you're not going to be happy. I just want to address these three things, really. So firstly, the whole idea that a guy, going out there and dating lots of girls and not securing a good relationship is his fault somehow. So it is really difficult to tell if a girl is crazy when you first meet her. A lot of girls, when you first meet them, they will put on such a brave face. They will put on such a good front, especially the psychos, especially the narcissists. And narcissism and female mentality, because think about it, you have to be almost a selfish, narcissistic psycho to think it's perfectly okay for your brother, for the men that you went to high school with, the men that you went to university with, to just go off and fight a war and be thrown into a meat grinder and murdered at the front lines of a war for your safety and go, oh, I'm just a girl, save me because I'm so innocent. While simultaneously then turning around and saying that the entire political system needs to be protect you and your rights. You have to have, by and large, across the board, some form of narcissistic, evil sort of traits. And what we're doing here is we're filtering through, because there's such a large percentage of them out there. So many good men get burnt by dating the wrong women. Look at the divorce, the divorce rates, the amount of divorce in the world, and how many women, push for divorce, and how many women actually not only push for the divorce, but get a really good deal out of the divorce. And so all of this signals that there's a large percentage of women who they're just bad to be around. They put on a good front up front. They might be pretty and beautiful, but they will act nice and good, and I won't put him in the video. And they'll put on a good front, and they can put on a good front for quite a long time. You see, they could do it for years. So what I suggest with guys is that when you start dating a girl, it might take a while for you to figure out whether she's crazy or not, or whether she's really just a bad person and she's been hiding it. So the early phases of dating, people put on their best self. They act polite. They're super careful around you. She will chew with her mouth closed, like, and she will never fart in front of you. She goes to the toilet, she will close the door and she will be very careful you don't hear anything. And maybe a year later, the door's wide open, she's farting in front of you, she's not worrying about dressing as best as she could, she's dressing up really well to go out to dinner, now she's turning up in her pajamas. And then you see her when she's comfortable with you, that's the person you're going to marry, and it takes a while for the courtesy, the freshness of the relationship, her being on guard, and her showing her true self. You see that she mistreats her parents, she's a little bit abusive to her mum and her dad, and you realize that that's your future. Now, if you date a girl and she's conned you, then it's not your fault, and you haven't stuck with her, that's not your fault. And so for the guys out there, they're like, oh, you've had all these failed relationships. Eventually, the guy that has failed relationships has a very, very good one. And if anything goes wrong, it's his fault, or he's decided to move on, or he's done something and he's moved on his terms, not on her terms. You see what I'm trying to say here? And so that's a really important point. And the flip side of that is stay at home, cover yourself in Cheetos, have a drink, smoke some weed, and play video games and look at porn. Or get out there and battle it away. Guys that start up businesses, a lot of these businesses fail. Some of the best, most successful entrepreneurs have more failed businesses. The guys that have the best relationships have more failed relationships. Simple. Now, chasing validation. PUAs are only chasing validation from women. Do you need water or you die? You need to drink some water, right? Well, I guess you're chasing validation from water or you die. I know this is a bit extreme, but you need to breathe, right? You breathe in air. Well, you're just chasing validation from air. I would say relationships, as human beings, we get lonely. We're not that stoic man that's able to hide in a cave. Even the guys that hide in man caves, they're drinking alcohol. They're distracting themselves with sport or video games. Some of them smoke weed. It's really just a cope. They're not doing it sober and by themselves, sitting there meditating for years on end. They're distracting themselves with sports on TV. They're distracting themselves with drugs and alcohol. They don't have access to women, so they're distracting themselves with porn. And so my argument here is that you cannot live without it. You can't live without friends and family and women. Sometimes you can't choose your family, you're born with them. Some of them are, sometimes like myself, you have a family that are a bunch of pieces of shit, and you got a single mother that bounces around all over the place. You don't have any real reliable family to rely on. And so therefore you need social interactions with friends and relationships with women. And so I would associate that, because a lot of men, they get lonely and then they just liquidate themselves. They get lonely, their wife divorces them, something happens, they're just by themselves all the time. They go down rabbit holes because they start losing their mind because they're alone in their own head. I would say having relationships, and as a man, like just having friends and family and loved ones around is in a way just as valuable, or almost as valuable, or as important as breathing or drinking water or anything else. Because if you've got all the water and all the oxygen all you want, and you're in a cave by yourself, or you're trapped in a jail cell, you're still mentally going to struggle unless you've got some friends or a girl around. These guys are still going to want to look at porn. They're going to still want to, they're going to need these things around. to have a fulfilling life. And so the idea that you're chasing validation from women, well, in a way it's true, because the same way that you're chasing validation from water or oxygen or food, or getting enough sleep, you're chasing sleep validation. The argument there is basically that there's such a limited amount of women that you can't rely on it. I get that argument. In the desert, there's a shortage of water too. But sometimes you just got to do with what there is. And, learning cold approach and getting out there and trying to meet some girls, that might be your only option. And so the argument that you're chasing validation from girls, it is true and it is not true at the same time, because you got no other choice. Unless you want to stay at home and pretend and be lonely. And that causes a lot of other issues with your life too. If you're not getting laid, if you don't have women around, it might be hard to focus on study. It might be hard to focus on your career without at least, a lot of guys, they will get married just so that they can focus on their business. And they got a wife at home. They might see her not very often, but when they do, in the back of his mind, he's got himself a woman, he's married, he's got some kids, and then he just works 7 days a week on his business. It's almost like he needed them as a support crew so that it at least feels like he's part of society while he gets out there and builds his becomes CEO and runs this massive business. There's a lot of guys that will fail their university exams because they're just not getting laid, and they find themselves masturbating all the time or horny all the time and never really getting a release, going down the rabbit hole of drugs and porn and alcohol and distractions, and they can never really focus on their studies, and they never get that PhD. Some of them fail their degree and it costs them a lot of money, and so the whole idea that you're chasing validation, just economics of life. There is scarcity in the world. That's just the world we live in. There's a scarcity of everything. There's a scarcity of views on my videos. Doesn't mean you have to quit, or it doesn't mean you have to. If you don't like the game, hate the game, not the player. Let's just put it that way. That's another argument there. I think that kind of covers the third one as well, the chasing of validation. But the third point I'd put in there is that there's an argument that PUAs and people going out there chasing girls and chasing dates with girls, they're sleeping with a lot of girls. And in most cases that is true. They are sleeping with a lot of girls. But a large percentage of the time, the girl is deciding to have the one-night stand, not them. A lot of the time, the girl is deciding to have the one-night stand. So at the end of the one-night stand, the girl decides, I'm going to go sleep with someone else now. And he would like her to stay around, but she doesn't. She goes off and sleeps with another guy. That's not him making the decision. So the idea is that a lot of these guys getting into pickup, they're just sleeping with lots of girls and mistreating them. It's just not true, because the women are the ones mistreating them, and it's a gaslighting, because they're the ones deciding to only have one night stand with the particular guy, and then they end up sleeping with a whole bunch of different guys because they're never happy with any of the guys that they're dating, because they have too much choice, too much freedom to go sleep around all over the place. And then they blame the PUAs for something that they're in total control of. And then other men who haven't actually practiced this and gone out and dated a lot of women, they have no idea. They think the PUAs, they actually buy into the marketing as well, thinking that a lot of the fake PUAs out there, the fake poachers, are actually getting laid when they're not. They believe the marketing, and then they also think that those PUAs are just banging a different girl every single day, sleeping with a lot of women, when in fact they're not, and they're rejecting all of the women when they're actually not. This is just the reality of marketing and the perception of PUAs out there, which is just not true. It's just not true at all. So, as a lonely guy, you don't really have a choice But to get out there, if you want to get yourself some good relationships, date a lot of girls, get into relationships with lots of different girls, hope that you don't get used for one-night stands, hope that you are able to, with proper strategies, coaching, sign up to do some coaching. I recommend you go to my website, top link in the description. It's on the YouTube channel here. You can click on the link and go sign up to my 30-day challenge. That I recommend that as a start for absolute newbies about cold approach. Go to the 30-day challenge, or sign up to one-on-one coaching, which you're gonna have to pay for, but it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth it. And getting out there and then dealing with a lot of, you're gonna get lays, you're gonna get a lot of rejection. And it helps you to grow as a man dealing with all of those things. I think that it is so good for you to deal with all of these problems associated with cold approach, picking up girls, dating girls, getting the rejection, trying to find a good girl that doesn't have all of these negative psychological problems, trying to figure it out earlier than other men. Ultimately, if you're a successful man, you come and get some coaching from myself and you figure out what type of women to avoid, you're more likely, you have a higher probability of marrying a woman who is going to be loyal to you, because I know how to do it. I know how to actually coach men to be able to identify those issues as well. And at the end of it, you end up saving, if you're a millionaire, saving millions of dollars actually by getting coaching. So it's also a good financial decision. But anyway, I just wanted to cover up those 3 things. Gee, I've talked for too long. It's like 17 minutes. I'll see you guys in the next video.